Welcome back to the Deep Dive, where we take the complexity and controversy of world figures and distill them into the most crucial insights so you can get smart fast. Today, we are turning our focus to the leader who has governed the world's largest democracy for over a decade, Narendra Modi.
It's truly a dense and often contradictory portfolio, the source material you shared, a deep, comprehensive overview of his entire career. It really demands a careful approach.
Right.
Our mission today is to cut through the often competing narratives, synthesizing what we know about his rise, his economic legacy, and, the dramatic ideological shift he has engineered in Indian governance.
That is the big picture tension, isn't it? We are looking at a man who started as a former full-time campaigner, a pracharak for the right-wing Hindu nationalist volunteer organization, the RSS. How does that figure rise to command consistently high domestic approval ratings, become a globally dominant leader, and yet at the same time fundamentally redefine India's political alignment toward the right, even weathering intense controversy along the way?
It's a study in political dexterity. And to understand it, I think we have to examine three critical things.
Okay.
First, the ideological roots planted during his youth. Then, the contentious, but also, economically successful in some ways, legacy of the Gujarat Chief Minister years. And finally, the massive centralized structural shifts he has orchestrated on the national stage since 2014.
It's hard to believe this global powerhouse started out working in a humble tea stall. Where do we even begin to understand those early seeds of ambition and ideology?
We begin right there, in Vadnagar, Gujarat. He was born in 1950 into a Gujarati family of the other backward class, or OBC, background.
And that's a crucial detail, right?
Oh, absolutely. It grounds his story in the vast social landscape of India, where identity and caste are politically vital. So, on one hand, you have those humble beginnings working infrequently at his father's tea stall at the Vadnagar railway station. But simultaneously, there's this early, clear drive toward public performance.
A drive that suggests the persona was being cultivated early on.
Completely. Though teachers described him as an average student academically, the sources repeatedly highlight that he was a keen, gifted debater with a strong interest in theater.
And he liked specific kinds of roles.
Yes, specifically preferring to play larger-than-life characters. That flair for the dramatic, the ability to command attention and present a powerful image, clearly influenced the political persona that now dominates the national and global stage.
And his formal education profile reflects a certain unconventionality. I mean, it seems like he was relying heavily on distance learning to acquire credentials, while already deeply entrenched in the political apparatus.
That's correct. He completed his secondary education in 1967, but he later acquired both his Bachelor of Arts, that was in 1978 from Delhi University School of Open Learning, and then his Master of Arts in 1983 from Gujarat University in Political Science.
All through external distance learning.
Exactly. And it's worth noting that the authenticity of those degrees has been a source of ongoing controversy, though Delhi University did later affirm the BA was authentic. For his development, however, the real university, you could say, was the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, or RSS.
He was introduced to the RSS at age 8, attending local shakas, or training sessions. When did this move from a weekend activity to his central, defining life commitment?
That happens in 1971. That's when he became a full-time pracharak, or campaigner, for the RSS in Gujarat. And this transition involved a deep ideological commitment. And historically, it often required a commitment to celibacy.
And this brings us to a complex, hidden chapter of his personal life that speaks volumes about the singular nature of his dedication to this political path.
It does. You're referring to the arranged betrothal and subsequent marriage to Yashodhabani Modi when he was just 18. This was a detail kept private for decades.
Right. And it's more than just a private matter, isn't it? It feels like a political footnote that underlines his core identity.
I think so. The sources state the marriage was never consummated, and he soon abandoned his wife, electing instead to dedicate his life fully to the RSS. A Modi biographer, cited in the source material, suggested the secrecy stemmed directly from that historical requirement that a pracharak maintain celibacy. So admitting he had a wife would have been, problematic for his ideological role within the organization.
So that decision to hide his marriage for decades and fully adhere to his pracharak identity, it really speaks volumes about the singular, almost monastic focus on his political path.
It does. It positions politics not just as a career, but as a total consuming mission. He only publicly affirmed the marriage in April 2014, right before the national election, and only because he was forced by electoral requirements to disclose his marital status.
Wow.
The fact that this is an 18-year-old's decision that then went on to define his public life for the next 40 years is, well, it's profound.
Moving on to his early political maturation, the years of the emergency in India between 1975 and 1977 were foundational for him. This was when Prime Minister Indira Gandhi declared a state of emergency, suspending civil liberties and jailing political opponents.
Yes, and this period became a crucible for his organizational skills. Modi was appointed General Secretary of the Gujarat Lok Sanar Samiti, an RSS committee that was coordinating opposition movements.
So he had to go underground.
He did. Because the government was actively suppressing dissent, he was forced to go underground, traveling frequently in disguise, once as a monk, another time as a Sikh, just to evade arrest.
So he was mastering the arts of clandestine organization, strategic maneuvering, and dramatic presentation all at once, all while organizing demonstrations and printing pamphlets under extreme pressure.
Precisely. And after the emergency lifted, the RSS officially assigned him to the Bharatiya Janata Party, or BJP, in 1985. This was part of a larger strategy by the Sangh Parivar to infuse RSS members into key party positions to ensure, ideological fidelity and organizational strength.
And his ascent within the BJP was rapid. He successfully organized the Ahmedabad municipal election campaign in 1987 and was named to the National Election Committee in 1990.
By 1998, he was promoted to the critical post of General Secretary for Organization of the BJP. This position is the key link between the BJP and the RSS, and his promotion followed a major political maneuver.
This was during the 1998 Gujarat Legislative Assembly election, right?
That's the one. He successfully maneuvered the selection committee to favor supporters of Keshubhai Patel, effectively ending deep factional divisions within the Gujarat BJP and securing a majority win. This really solidified his reputation not just as a dedicated ideological worker, but as a ruthless and effective political strategist. And that paved the way for his return to state politics, but this time in charge.
And that takes us directly into segment 2, the Chief Ministership of Gujarat, a defining period that established his national reputation, for better and for worse. Modi's ascension to the chief minister role in Gujarat in October 2001 was a study in taking power amidst crisis. He replaced Keshubhai Patel, whose administration was reeling from criticism over poor health and, crucially, the widely perceived mishandling of the devastating 2001 Bhuj earthquake relief efforts.
Right, it was engineered by the national BJP leadership, who needed a strong, fresh face. But Modi insisted on setting the terms.
He famously declined the deputy CM role.
He did, insisting that he would be fully responsible for Gujarat or not at all. This signaled his centralized, singular command style from day one before he had even taken the oath.
But within 6 months of taking office, his tenure became tragically and eternally linked to the 2002 Gujarat violence. This is where the source material presents a deeply contested and painful historical narrative.
The catalyst was the 27th of February 2002 train fire near Godhra, which killed approximately 60 Hindu pilgrims returning from Ayodhya. Almost immediately, Modi publicly blamed local Muslims for the incident.
And the next day?
The following day, the Vishwa Hindu Parishad, or VHP, which is a key affiliate of the RSS, called for a general strike, a ban, across the state, which rapidly ignited widespread rioting.
The aftermath was just horrific. The official death toll was reported as just over 1,000 people, with about 3/4 of them being Muslim. Independent sources, however, estimated the death toll at over 2,000, with the overwhelming majority being Muslim.
And the violence was characterized by its extreme brutality, including mass rapes and mutilation.
The criticism levied against the Modi administration for its handling of the situation is severe and extensive.
It is. Scholars describe the government as complicit in the riots, with some explicitly calling the violence a pogrom, or even an example of state terrorism. And this wasn't just seen as negligence. Critics specifically pointed to consistent police non-intervention, even in cases where intervention would have been possible.
Suggesting a tacit approval or even direction from above.
That was the accusation. And the government's actions immediately following the Godhra fire were also criticized for exacerbating the tensions.
How so?
Well, the decision by the government to transport the bodies of the Godhra victims to Ahmedabad is seen as having inflamed the violence in the city. It provided a very visual flashpoint for mobilization. Furthermore, the state government initially offered Muslim victims of the riots half the compensation given to Hindu victims, a discriminatory decision that was only reversed after a court challenge.
This complex legal and political firestorm followed him for years. In 2008, the Supreme Court appointed a special investigation team, the SIT, to investigate the broader government complicity.
And this is where the tightrope walk began. The SIT reported in 2012 that it found no evidence to initiate prosecution proceedings against him.
Which sounds like a clean chit.
It sounds like one, but the sources also point out that the SIT's findings were immediately challenged.
That's right. An amicus curiae, a neutral party appointed by the Supreme Court to assist with its deliberation, a man named Raju Ramachandran, submitted a report that was contrary to the SIT's conclusion. He argued that Modi could be prosecuted based on the available evidence.
So you had the government-appointed team saying no evidence, and the court-appointed neutral observers saying yes, there is a basis for prosecution. It's a very confusing picture. Ultimately, the magistrate's court accepted the SIT's final report to close the case in 2013, rejecting the protest petition from a victim's widow, Zakia Jaffrey. The Supreme Court later upheld this clean chit in 2022.
But how can a legal body find no evidence when an amicus curiae appointed by the same court argued he could be prosecuted? Can you walk us through that legal and political tightrope?
Well, the difference often lies in the burden of proof required for criminal prosecution versus what constitutes prosecutable evidence in a complex mass violence case. The SIT found that the evidence didn't meet the high threshold needed for criminal conspiracy charges.
I see.
Politically, however, the original SIT decision caused widespread anger and disbelief among the country's Muslim communities. So, while he was legally exonerated, the political and social accusations remain a defining feature of his career. It's something his opposition uses to frame him, and which his supporters dismiss as a politically motivated smear.
A perpetual narrative tension. What's fascinating is that almost immediately following this period, the political rhetoric shifted entirely from explicit Hindutva toward development.
It was a remarkable strategic pivot, but not before capitalizing on the immediate polarization. In the December 2002 election, the BJP won a two-thirds majority, successfully leveraging that religious polarization and framing any criticism of his government as an attack on Gujarati pride.
And once that majority was secure, the rhetoric transitioned sharply to the now famous Gujarat model.
Exactly. And he intentionally curtailed the influence of hardline Sangh Parivar organizations that had helped him in 2002, didn't he?
He did. He started prioritizing the image of a pragmatic, development-focused administrator over that of a hardline ideologue. He openly curtailed the influence of groups like the VHP and the Bharatiya Kisan Sangh, the BKS.
Right.
For example, when the BKS staged a protest against his agricultural policies, he ordered their eviction from state-provided housing. He deepened the rift with the VHP by ordering the demolition of 200 illegal temples in Gandhinagar to enforce urban planning rules. This sent a clear message. Economic growth was his priority, and ideological allies could not stand in the way of his centralized control.
This pragmatism was also evident in his dealing with the international community. The U.S. denied him a visa in 2005. He was the only person ever denied a U.S. visa under that specific law. And the U.K. and EU also initially refused him entry over his role in the riots.
That diplomatic isolation was a defining challenge.
It was, but it dissolved as his national prominence grew. The U.K. lifted its ban in 2012, followed by the EU in 2013. And upon his 2014 election as prime minister, the U.S. lifted its restrictions and invited him to Washington, D.C. It shows the powerful reality that, globally, political necessity often overrides past diplomatic stances when a leader gains immense, undeniable domestic power.
Now, let's dive into the core of the Gujarat model itself. What was the tangible economic upside that allowed him to market this as a national success story?
The upside was quantified, large-scale growth that attracted global attention. Gujarat's GDP grew at an average rate of 10% during his tenure, a rate above the national average and competitive with other industrialized states. Modi was a fervent supporter of privatization, liberalization, and small government. Policies often considered contradictory to the traditional stance of the RSS, which had historically opposed privatization.
He certainly made Gujarat look like a business-friendly destination. It topped the World Bank's ease of doing business rankings among Indian states for 2 consecutive years.
And he proved he could attract capital. At the 2007 Vibrant Gujarat Summit, for example, something like 6.6 trillion rupees in deals were signed. Beyond capital, he also tackled persistent infrastructure problems. His government completed the electrification of all villages, a continuation of his predecessor's work, and implemented the Jyotigram Yojana, which rationalized agricultural electricity.
What did that do exactly?
It separated it from other rural power sources. This improved stability for farmers and reduced costs, cementing his image as an effective administrator who gets results.
But the narrative is highly contentious because the economic growth did not translate equally to human welfare. Critics argue this was a trickle-down approach that never really trickled down far enough.
That is the central, enduring criticism that follows him to the national level. Despite the impressive growth, Gujarat ranked poorly on human development, poverty relief, nutrition, and education indices. The state ranked 13th in poverty and a worrying 21st in education among Indian states. Critics pointed out shocking statistics, such as nearly 45% of children under 5 being underweight. Furthermore, the state government spent significantly less than the national average on education and healthcare as a percentage of its budget.
So we have a clear duality. High growth, massive investment, but critics argue this led to widening social inequality. The benefits of the development were often limited to the urban middle class, sidelining Muslims, Dalits, and Adivasis.
Precisely. The sources note that between 2001 and 2011, Gujarat's relative position in terms of poverty and female literacy didn't significantly change. It remained firmly near the median of Indian states. It was a growth strategy, explicitly focused on attracting capital, simplifying business regulations, even weakening labor laws via the creation of special economic zones, without a corresponding focus on bolstering social welfare programs or ensuring inclusive wealth distribution. This is the template he brought to Delhi.
Okay, let's track that template's journey as he makes the ascent to national power. The national stage offered a much bigger canvas, and the 2014 campaign was the perfect storm. Modi was officially named the BJP's candidate in September 2013, a decision that faced significant resistance from within the party, notably from the veteran L.K. Advani.
What's crucial here is that the campaign became less about the BJP's platform and more a referendum on Modi himself. He was packaged as this decisive, strong, masculine leader who could bring about development.
Right.
His strategy focused heavily on the perceived corruption and policy paralysis of the previous government, contrasting it directly with the high GDP growth he claimed to have delivered in Gujarat.
He also utilized technology on an unprecedented scale, almost manufacturing a sense of ubiquity.
Oh, the technology use was staggering. He spent an estimated 50 billion rupees, about $590 million on his campaign blitz. This included addressing over 1,000 rallies via hologram appearances. It demonstrated a mastery of both social media and cutting-edge media technology, creating an image of a leader who was everywhere at once.
The results were seismic.
Monumental is the word. The BJP won 282 seats, securing 31% of the vote. Critically, it was the first time any party had won an absolute parliamentary majority on its own since 1984.
A huge deal.
Commentators universally describe this result as a political realignment, shifting India away from its secular socialist post-independence consensus toward right-wing politics rooted in capitalism and Hindu cultural nationalism. Modi himself won comfortably in both Varanasi and Vadnagar.
Once in office, the centralization of power was immediate and strategic.
Absolutely. Yeah. One of the first and most symbolic acts was the abolition of the Planning Commission, a decades-old body central to India's socialist Nehruvian economic planning structure. Replacing it with the National Institution for Transforming India, or Niti Aayog, wasn't just administrative shuffling. It concentrated the power previously distributed across that commission squarely in the Prime Minister's office.
And this move, along with the centralization of decision-making, quickly drew comparisons to Indira Gandhi's command style.
It did, and he governed with a heavy hand, especially when dealing with dissent. We saw the immediate launch of Intelligence Bureau investigations into numerous NGOs and civil society organizations, even major global groups like Medicine Sans Frontiers and the Sierra Club.
What was the justification for that?
These were justified under the premise that these groups were actively slowing economic growth and holding back development. The investigations were criticized internationally as a witch hunt aimed at stifling democratic opposition. Furthermore, the administration aggressively used sedition and terrorism laws against government critics. This is a classic pattern of consolidating executive power and minimizing external checks and balances, a hallmark of democratic backsliding.
Yet, amidst this consolidation, there was also a focus on streamlined governance.
Yes. In his first 3 years, he repealed 1,200 obsolete laws. To put that into perspective, that is a number greater than the total 301 laws repealed in the previous 64 years combined. This speaks to a relentless focus on efficiency and removing bureaucratic hurdles, which was a clear deliverable promised by the Gujarat model.
This emphasis on strong, decisive action carried into the 2019 general election, where the narrative shifted sharply to national security.
It really did.
Yeah.
The campaign slogans reflected this, notably the main Beach Chowkidar, I too am a watchman campaign. The timing of the Pulwama attack and the retaliatory Balakot airstrike was crucial, while sources suggest that the airstrike's military success was dubious, with open-source imagery suggesting no significant targets were hit.
Right, and later the administration even admitted friendly fire killed 6 military personnel during the skirmishes.
Exactly. But despite that, the action had a profound, mobilizing nationalist appeal for voters.
The focus on defense and national security paid enormous electoral dividends.
It did. The NDA coalition won again with an even stronger mandate, securing 353 seats, with the BJP alone winning 303 seats. This secured him a second term, where the ideological changes we'll discuss in the next segment truly accelerated.
Now, fast-forwarding to the most recent election in 2024, the political landscape changed again, even with Modi still securing victory.
The third election, fought under the banner of the Modi Ki Guarantee campaign, marked a significant change in the political temperature. While the NDA coalition secured 292 seats, enough for a simple majority, the BJP lost its absolute majority, winning only 240 seats on its own.
So they had to rely on coalition partners.
Right, a return to the coalition politics that defined India before 2014.
And his personal victory margin shrunk significantly in Varanasi, which the source notes was the second lowest victory margin in percentage points for sitting prime minister in India after Chandrasekhar.
This shift, the loss of the standalone majority, signals that the decade of unified dominance might be reaching a point of saturation or fatigue. Furthermore, the post-election context was immediately controversial. The opposition claimed widespread electoral fraud and accused the Election Commission of India, the ECI, of collusion with the ruling BJP.
Which, regardless of veracity, highlights the persistent critique concerning the erosion of institutional independence under his tenure. Let's transition now to what he actually did with that power, dissecting the key economic shakeups and the ideological legislation of his 2 full terms.
The economic trajectory of the Modi government is defined by a consistent neoliberal approach, a strong focus on privatization and liberalization. We saw foreign direct investment, or FDI, liberalized in significant sectors like defense and railways.
But looking back at the Gujarat model, this prioritization of capital formation came at a measurable cost to social spending.
Exactly. Spending on social programs declined from 14.6% of GDP under the previous Congress government to 12.6% in its first year. Health and education spending decreased as a share of the budget, and the budget percentage spent on children's nutrition, education, and health was almost halved between 2014 and 2022.
Wow.
This reinforces the core philosophy. Development is best achieved by easing the path for business and investment rather than through large-scale state welfare. He also launched the ambitious Make in India initiative, trying to encourage foreign manufacturing to turn the country into a global production hub.
But the lasting economic legacy will be defined by 2 massive reforms: the GST and demonetization. Let's start with the Goods and Services Tax, or GST.
The GST was arguably the largest tax overhaul since India's independence, taking effect in July 2017. It was designed to replace a chaotic system of federal and state levies, subsuming about 17 prior taxes into a single, unified tax structure. The intention was to create a common national market, simplifying trade and boosting compliance.
That's a monumental administrative undertaking, but no move has sparked more disruption and debate than demonetization in November 2016. What was the intended purpose, and what was the mechanical shock that followed?
The intention was a moral and economic one, to curb black money, corruption, and the use of counterfeit currency by abruptly abolishing the 501,000 rupee banknotes, which accounted for 86% of the currency in circulation by value.
86%.
The mechanical shock, however, was immediate and widespread. People had just hours to deposit or exchange their high-value notes.
And the immediate impact on the ground was catastrophic for the informal economy, which relies almost entirely on cash.
Precisely. It led to severe cash shortages across the country. We saw stock market decline, an estimated loss of 1.5 million jobs, and internally, the policy was assessed to have wiped out 1% of the country's GDP. The sources even mentioned several tragic deaths linked to the rush and panic to exchange cash. It was a high-risk, high-disruption gamble.
But supporters point to a long-term shift, arguing it formalized the economy. What do the results say?
Proponents highlight that digital transactions steeply increased following the cash crunch, pushing India's digital economy forward significantly. They also point out that the number of individual income tax returns filed rose by 25% the following year, suggesting improved tax compliance.
But what about the macro picture?
If we look at the macro picture, the high-risk gamble didn't translate into higher overall growth. India's GDP growth declined during its first 8 years to an average of 5.5%, compared to 7.03% under the previous government. Furthermore, an internal government report indicated unemployment reached its highest level in 45 years in 2017, largely attributed to the destabilizing effects of both demonetization and the initial turbulence of GST implementation.
So, highly contested results. A successful push toward digitization and compliance, but significant structural economic damage and job losses.
Let's shift gears now to the ideological core of the government, the Hindutva agenda.
While Modi prioritized development rhetoric in Gujarat, once in national power, the ideological underpinnings of the BJP, which are firmly rooted in the RSS philosophy of Hindutva, became overtly expressed through legislative and administrative actions. We saw increased activity of Hindu nationalist organizations like the RSS and Hindu Mahasabha, including organized religious conversion programs and campaigns against the so-called love jihad conspiracy theory. And the RSS connection was formalized within the government structure itself through appointments, suggesting a conscious effort to align key national institutions with the party's ideology.
Precisely. The Modi administration appointed RSS-affiliated individuals to prominent government and academic positions. For instance, the chairmanship of the Indian Council of Historical Research, or ICHR, went to an individual with RSS ties in 2014. Furthermore, sources note numerous changes to history textbooks aimed at de-emphasizing Nehruvian secularism and glorifying Modi. Scholars view this as part of a cultural nationalist agenda aimed at staffing major institutions with party loyalists to reshape the national narrative.
The second term, starting in 2019, saw the rollout of major legislative changes, all of which were long-held goals of the BJP and the RSS.
3 major legislative shifts stand out for their profound legal and social impact. First, the administration made the controversial practice of triple talaq, or instant divorce, illegal and punishable in August 2019. A move seen by many as granting Muslim women greater rights, but criticized by others as unwarranted state intervention into minority personal laws.
Then, the dramatic revocation of Article 370.
Yes, the government abrogated Article 370 of the Constitution, which granted special status to Jammu and Kashmir. This was a hugely symbolic move for the right wing, reorganizing the state into 2 union territories. This move was not smooth. It was accompanied by a severe security lockdown, mass detentions of local political leaders, and the suspension of internet services that lasted until February 2021. It fundamentally altered the political and constitutional relationship of Kashmir with the rest of India.
And the third, the Citizenship Amendment Act, or CAA, was arguably the most controversial internationally because of its overt use of religion.
The CAA provides an accelerated route to citizenship for specific persecuted non-Muslim minorities: Hindus, Sikhs, Buddhists, Jains, Parsis, or Christians, fleeing from 3 neighboring countries, Afghanistan, Bangladesh, and Pakistan. Critically, it does not include Muslims. This marked a watershed moment. It was the first time that religion was overtly used as a criterion for citizenship under Indian law. This prompted widespread global criticism and massive domestic protests.
And those protests led directly into the tragic 2020 Delhi riots.
The communal tensions were already high, and the counter-demonstrations against the CAA escalated into horrific violence, chiefly carried out by Hindu mobs attacking Muslims. The resulting toll was 53 deaths, 2/3 of whom were Muslim. This pattern of elevated communal tension resurfaced during the 2024 election campaign, where Modi was heavily criticized for his rhetoric, including referring to Muslims as infiltrators who would seize India's wealth.
Claims that fact-checkers noted were part of a wider pattern of communal targets in his speeches.
That's right.
This systematic effort to reshape institutions and constitutional law ties into the larger concerns cited in the source material: democratic backsliding.
The evidence cited by international watchdog groups is substantial. Under Modi's tenure, India has been observed shifting toward an authoritarian style of government marked by a cult of personality. Critics point to the systemic attack on mechanisms of accountability and the erosion of civil rights and press freedom. The core idea is that the BJP government has incrementally attacked nearly all existing mechanisms: the ECI, academic bodies, the judiciary, designed to hold the executive to account, ensuring they become subservient to the political executive or captured by party loyalists.
But how can a leader who oversees a measurable decline in democratic freedoms, as the sources suggest, simultaneously maintain such high domestic approval ratings, peaking at 88% in polls? How do we reconcile those 2 facts?
That is the central paradox. One factor is narrative control. His administration has mastered the projection of strength and decisiveness, often framing strong, centralized action, even if it limits dissent, as necessary for national development and security. Second, The sheer magnitude of the development projects and welfare schemes he has delivered resonates deeply with the population, especially infrastructure. And third, the Hindutva plank unifies a significant portion of the electorate around a cultural identity that feels validated by the government's actions.
So for many voters, perceived efficiency, national pride, and economic stability outweigh concerns about institutional checks and balances or minority rights.
It suggests a population prioritizing a strong state that delivers over one that merely adheres to liberal democratic norms. This centralization, though, has allowed him significant success on the global stage. Let's turn now to his foreign policy and public image.
On the foreign policy front, Modi continued the preceding government's approach of multi-alignment, aiming to improve economic ties and security with diverse global partners. He rebranded the Look East policy to the more proactive Act East policy, signaling deeper engagement with Southeast Asia.
And the relationship with the United States is a perfect example of this pragmatic realignment. Despite the earlier visa denial, relations improved dramatically, driven by shared strategic interests regarding China and the need for economic partnership. Modi visited the U.S. several times, and the relationship remained positive through different presidential administrations.
He also maintains a strong personal relationship with Russian President Vladimir Putin.
That relationship was vital in 2022. India's decision to maintain neutrality during the Russian invasion of Ukraine, while focusing entirely on the massive evacuation of over 19,000 Indian students, an operation dubbed Operation Ganga, was a clear demonstration of this multi-alignment strategy in action.
Right, placing strategic autonomy above all else.
India placed its strategic autonomy and domestic citizen welfare above the demands of Western alliances.
Relations with neighboring Pakistan, however, have been defined by confrontation and a tough-on-terror focus, often used for domestic political messaging.
Absolutely. Modi promised a tough stance. We have the example of the 2016 surgical strike, where India claimed strikes on terror launch pads, though independent analysts suggested exaggeration of the scope and casualties. This tactic was repeated in 2019 with the Balakot airstrike, a retaliatory measure after the Pulwama attack. As noted earlier, while militarily dubious based on open-source imagery, the domestic political efficacy was enormous, proving the power of decisive, visible action.
And the sources even mention recent conflict activity, Operation Sindoor, in 2025.
The continued tension is a constant feature. India's Operation Sindoor, targeting terror infrastructure in Azad Kashmir and Punjab, was met by Pakistan's retaliatory air assault, Operation Bunyan Un Marsoos, targeting military sites in western India. This rapid escalation and subsequent ceasefire, all within a short period, exemplifies the tit-for-tat military signaling that has defined his defense posture.
Meanwhile, tensions with China in the north have also deteriorated significantly.
Following the 2020 China-India skirmishes, specifically the Galwan Valley standoff where dozens of soldiers were killed, relations plunged. By late 2022, Modi faced significant criticism for his silence regarding the ceding of an estimated 2,000 square kilometers of land to China since the 2020 clashes, leading to opposition accusations of weak leadership on India's borders.
Let's turn briefly to climate policy, which shows a significant ideological evolution. In 2014, Modi was openly skeptical, stating that climate has not changed, we have changed. This initial approach was consistent with moves to reduce the Environment Ministry's budget and dilute environmental laws to favor industrial activity.
However, a dramatic shift occurred later in his administration toward supporting climate action and promoting clean energy. This was crystallized in 2015 when he proposed the International Solar Alliance, or ISA, initiative, positioning India as a leader of the Global South on climate solutions.
And at the COP26 conference, he announced India would aim for carbon neutrality by 2070.
That's a huge commitment. And the sources note that India is actually performing well against its stated goals.
They are.
Yes. India is the only major economy that is currently on track to meet its Paris Agreement goals, even achieving its goal of 10% ethanol blending in fuel ahead of schedule. This successful pivot allows him to maintain credibility as a responsible global actor, while still arguing that developed countries hold the historical responsibility for climate change, a position that solidifies his role as a voice for developing nations.
We have to return to the immense scale of his public perception. Despite the political and social controversies, his approval ratings remain phenomenal at home.
He has received consistently high domestic approval ratings, peaking at an extraordinary 88% in a 2017 Pew Research poll. He regularly ranks as the world's most approved leader in global surveys like Morning Consult, testament to the success of his public messaging and image cultivation.
And that personal image is carefully curated down to his clothing.
Absolutely. He is noted for his ironed half-sleeve kurta style, but also for specific high-impact statements, like the famous suit he wore, which featured his own name repeatedly embroidered in the pinstrokes.
Oh, I remember that.
A detail that sparked immense media attention and solidified the idea of a personal, centralized brand. Biographers describe him as charismatic and energetic, if also sometimes perceived as arrogant by critics.
He's certainly managed to craft a lasting cultural footprint. There are biopics, television series, and he even appeared on Discovery Channel's Man vs. Wild with Bear Grylls in 2019. It's hard to imagine a previous Indian prime minister engaging with pop culture and media platforms like that.
It's an unprecedented level of cultural penetration, and it secures his celebrity status. This recognition extends internationally too, visible in the vast collection of civilian honors he has received. The list is staggering. Champions of the Earth from the UN, the Seoul Peace Prize, the U.S. Legion of Merit, Russia's Order of St. Andrew, Nigeria's Grand Commander of the Order of the Niger, Kuwait's Order of Mubarak the Great, and Bhutan's highest civilian decoration, the Order of the Dragon King.
And to top off the cultural influence, he is a published author, writing books like Exam Warriors for Students. He even penned the lyrics for 2 Gujarati Garba songs, and a song featuring his speech on millets, abundance in millets, even received a Grammy nomination in 2024.
This blend is key to understanding him. He's a leader simultaneously deeply rooted in the political ideology of the RSS, having written the book Jogatu Ponje profiling its leaders, and profoundly media-savvy, embracing pop culture and modern marketing techniques to create an enduring, inescapable brand.
That dual identity perfectly encapsulates the man and his mission. So what does this all mean for you, the listener, as you synthesize this deep dive?
If we synthesize his career, I think the defining characteristic is the political dexterity required for his transition. He moved from a hardline RSS pracharak who was undeniably tied to the controversy of the 2002 Gujarat riots, to a hyper-focused, development-centric chief minister who successfully marketed the Gujarat model as a national necessity.
And translating that skill set to the national stage resulted in the unprecedented ability to centralize power within the Prime Minister's office. He successfully engineered a massive political realignment toward the right wing, fundamentally changing India's political landscape, even if the recent 2024 election signaled a required shift back toward coalition management.
The ongoing tension remains the most crucial takeaway. It's the constant duality between the rapid, large-scale economic and infrastructure initiatives like major tax reform, the Make in India initiative, and highly visible national projects, and the persistent, measurable decline in democratic freedoms, institutional independence, and the marginalization of minorities through targeted ideological legislation like the CAA.
Modi's commitment to the RSS ideology is clear through his administrative appointments and his writing. His focus on highly visible, centralized infrastructure projects is also evident. You just have to think of the Statue of Unity or the Central Vista redevelopment. He aims for legacies both ideological and monumental.
Which leads us to our final provocative thought for you to consider. Given the intensity of his cult of personality and his proven ability to deliver highly visible results, how will future historians ultimately weigh the value of his enduring domestic approval against the quantifiable shifts in India's democratic and ideological framework he engineered over the past decade? Was this a period of developmental necessity enabled by centralization, or was it one of institutional corrosion masked by economic success? And can the two outcomes truly be separated in the final analysis of his era?
That is a question worth a deep, long thought. Thank you for joining us on The Deep Dive.